Hey, what's up, guys? It's your good friend Airsoftman819 here again with yet another video. Today's video is going to be kind of a blast from the past kind of thing. This is a case that has been featured on my channel before. A few years ago, I built a computer that I named the White Death. It was an AM3 system with a 8350. And I built that computer. It was a pretty good system. It was one of my first. It was actually the first from scratch gaming PC I ever built, and it actually went really well. But I ended up giving that PC to a friend of mine, and it actually got lost in a fire. Unfortunately, he's fine. Everything's fine. It was a few years ago. Everybody's all right. But the point is that I was able to reacquire one of these cases. I did a build in it for a previous amount of time, and it didn't work all that well. The thermals weren't that great. I didn't have it set up very well. So, yeah. So basically, the name of this case is the Thermaltake. Okay. In the video, if you want to go see it, it's I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago I did it. Please be patient with me. I was new and I didn't know how to pronounce Thermaltake. I pronounced it Thermal Lake for whatever reason, so just ignore that, please. So, yeah. This case, I believe, was released in 2012 or 2013. It is called the Thermaltake Arctic, not Arctic, Thermaltake MS-1, Commander MS-1 Snow Edition. So, Commander MS-1 Snow Edition. It can contain either a full ATX or a micro ATX motherboard standard. It, for today's standards, it's pretty basic. It doesn't really have that many features that are unusual to people these days. I mean, it's fairly basic. It was a fairly cheap case when it came out, but it's sort of kind of collectible now, and it can fetch a little bit of money now for some reason, especially new. I found one of these new, and they wanted like $180, like $200 for it, and this was like a $50, $60 case when it was new. I found this one for $46 in like new condition, and that was honestly even more than I wanted to pay. I honestly wanted to find one for like 30, but yeah. So we'll start going over the features. Honestly, what makes this case popular is its white color. They actually did a really good job on the white coloration of matching the plastic and the steel. And the paint is really high quality. It doesn't like to chip off very easily or discolor, which is something that has made this case age pretty well as far as looks wise. It doesn't look that bad. I think it still holds up, and they actually have a Commander Snow Edition case they make now. It's quite different than this, but Thermaltake still has the Snow line of cases, and they're actually really freaking expensive now, which they weren't back then. I don't know what's changed. Thermaltake cases went really up in price, but yeah. So we'll go over the front panel first, and we'll work our way around. So there's three 5 1/4 bays up here, and you can mount 5 1/4 inch drives or expansion bays, like for cooling systems and things. If you want to have external cooling adjustments and things like that, you can add those in as expansions. There's three of them here. These covers are actually grated steel with foam behind them. There is no airflow there, but it keeps everything covered up and looks nice. And actually, it's pretty uniform. If you look at it from the right angle, sometimes you can't even see the creases in between the panels, which is up, and they fit pretty tightly. So it's honestly pretty well built in that regard. You have one 3.5 inch right down here for extra USB ports or a card reader or whatever. You have the Thermaltake logo down here. It's more finer mesh down here because there is an intake fan behind this, a 120 mil. I'm probably not going to rip the front panel off of this. I might, because interesting thing about this case is you can technically only mount one 120 down here as an intake, but there's another mount hidden up here for another fan. So I'm assuming they use this as a platform for other cases. But I think if you get one of those thin fans, it will work. So I might actually rip the front panel off of this, even though it's a bear to get off. This front panel clings to the side of this thing like a suckerfish clings to the side of a fish tank. You really have to yank on it to get it off. So you have your power button here. It's actually nice and clicky and has a nice stiff spring behind it. And you have your reset down here. Your hard drive and power LEDs. You have a USB 2, mic jack, headphone jack. It's cool that these are separate. On a lot of newer cases, they're together. So that's actually kind of a cool legacy thing. On most older cases, that's going to be a separate thing. And you actually have USB 3.0. USB 3.0 definitely was around at the time, and it was kind of a little bit of a high-end feature. You weren't seeing it that much at the time, but it's cool that this has at least one on the front. And obviously, if you have a motherboard that has them on the back, or has an extra header, you can run it to an expansion card and add a couple more USB 3s right on the front pretty easily and cheaply. So yeah, we'll move on to the side. Got regular thumb screws to take it off. It's Antec style in the regard that it doesn't slide off. It pivots off and unhooks from the front end, which I like better than panels that slide, because the slidey panels tend to not want to slide and get hung up and want to bend, and it's just a pain in the dick. So you just grab this little handle here that's conveniently pushed out of the steel and just pull, and then just pull backwards, and your panel comes right off. I kind of complained about this case in my original review, saying this panel was difficult to take on and off. That's just because I was young and dumb and didn't understand how it worked. So you have an acrylic window here on the side. It's not huge, which I like. I don't like cases all the time that have giant glass side panels, even though I just bought a new case that has giant glass side panels, and I put something in it, and we got a separate review on that, all right? So you have some ventilation down here for a graphics card. You technically could put a 120 here, but the corner screws aren't really beveled out, so you'll chew up the paint pretty hard if you try to put a fan in there, because it's not fitted for the screws. So you can do it. Just understand the four corner holes are going to get marred up after a while, especially if you take off and remove a fan occasionally. And the acrylic window just is using plastic rivets. It's a little bit corny by today's standards, but back in like 2012, 2013, this was the bee's knees right here. And I still think it looks pretty. I think some cases are sort of timeless, and this is one of them. It's just sharp. I think it's great. It's got some old kind of legacy features that dated a little bit, like your drive cages here that take up most of the front. And but you have your USB 3 header there. You have your front panel connectors, which are unfortunately multicolored. But you could get some sleeving or some braiding and put around these if you wanted to. And it's the same with the HD audio and your USB 2 headers. I got it tied up in here, but there's USB 2 header up in here. So you have mounts for ATX and micro ATX in here, so it can take both boards. There is no mini ITX mounts. You have somewhat of a filter in the bottom for a power supply. Here, maybe I'll dismount the camera for a minute here. Move you guys in so you can see just a hair bit better. So you have a filter down here for a power supply. So you could mount your power supply fan down, and it's got enough coverage I can fit my fingers underneath it. So it should be able to draw air from underneath. And it actually has a bottom intake fan mount right here for a 120. And I have one of my cheap purple LED V-True fans mounted here as an intake config right now. But you could put a filter on this. It might suck a lot of dust in, being this kind of close to the floor or the table or ground, wherever you're setting this thing. So, yeah. There's the manufacture date, by the way, 2013. So, yep, 2012, 2013, I was right. So, guessed it right off the top of my hat. No, I did not see that before I did this. I haven't actually had to side off this in a while. So, yeah. I don't know. The filter seems a little restrictive. I honestly would almost rather not even have it, or have like a full mesh filter instead of having this really thick plastic grating. So unfortunately, because the fan's at the bottom, you can easily like get cables and stuff jammed into the blades. So it's recommended, and I actually have one, you get one of these grades and put over the fan so you don't chop up your cables or destroy your fan. You can paint these black too, or you can buy them already black, or they have little plastic ones you can get too. So you have quick mount bays. You have your 5 1/4. You have your hard drive mounts. This weird looking one's for your 3.5-inch bay. This is your hard drives. There's a couple missing. I don't think it's supposed to be a full deck anyways. You have 3 of them. I mean, if you have more than 3 hard drives, you're a freaking data hog. Data hoarder. Pretty quick though. And pretty efficient, you know. And they all work pretty well. None of them are broken. None of them are stuck. And the case is, you know, 7, 8 years old. So they all still work really well. I don't think the ends are metal. No, the ends aren't metal. They're plastic. So those little nubbins might break off. That's, I don't know how I feel about that. Okay. So on the top, you have a 120 fan mount. See, the thing is your top motherboard screws for your standoffs for your motherboard are really close to the top of the case. So you have to be careful what fan you put up here and what motherboard you use. Because if you use the wrong fan and motherboard configuration with this top exhaust, your motherboard's going to hit it, or your RAM, or whatever. So it's kind of a flaw in this case. It's a little bit frustrating because you have to be kind of cautious. Honestly, with this case, I'd recommend getting extra thin 120s. Because that way you can take advantage of this and not have to worry about it hitting anything. And you can use this extra hidden mount back here probably and add another intake fan in the front to improve your thermals. Because as it stands, the thermals, from what I got, weren't very good. But the thing is, and there's another flaw in this case, don't buy this case. It's a neat looking legacy case, but it is a pain to build in. There's no cable management hardly. It's just... So... basically, if you use just slightly beefier power supply than normal, it'll hit this fan, and you won't be able to use the bottom intake mount. And that was the issue I had when I tried to build in this. I put my Ryzen build in it for a minute, and before I had to sell it, sadly. But anyways, I built something even more badass. I can't wait to show you guys. Anyway, I couldn't use this bottom fan mount, so it got hot as hell because it couldn't really intake, because all I had was this 120 in the front and 120 in the back, and an exhaust up top that really wasn't doing much because there was no intake here for it to mesh with. Because an exhaust can't really work that great if there's not an intake opposed to it bringing in fresh air. You know, it's just how airflow works. You know, you have to have positive and negative pressure, and they have to be equal for the case to be moving air cleanly through it. And you do have a multi-fan mount back here that it can accept 80 millimeter, 92 millimeter, and 120 millimeter fans. And you have external cooling punch outs back here, if that's your, you know, bag, I guess. So you have like this weird bracket, and this thing's kind of a pain too. You have to unscrew this thumb screw out of the inside. And you have to like slide this bracket off. See, I can't even do it with one hand. Okay, it's got these slots, these little hooks that hook in and slide up to the PCI expansion covers. It is such a pain. Why do people do this? You don't even have to have this here. Just have regular screws and mounts like everybody else. My God, Thermaltake, why? This case looked so badass, yet it was a potato on the inside, I swear. I bought it because of its looks, and I regretted it. So here's your cable management. That's it. I can barely fit my index finger in there. And my finger can't even fit between the side panel and the back of the motherboard plate. And that's how it is over here, too. I can't even fit my fingers through here. So this is pretty much one of your only cable management routes. It's just this. and this little bit of space behind it. Basically, so this basic channel right here and everywhere else is pretty much your cable management. You have a couple little holes that you might be able to run some front panel connectors through, but that's about it. It's so small that I'm not even going to take the opposite panel off because there's nothing to see there. I don't even think there's SSD mounts in this thing, and it came out in 2013. I have cases from like 2009, 2010 that have SSD mounts. So yeah, we're going to flip this around and take the other panel off because I'm curious now, These are not factory. Shout out to Vice Grip Garage. These are some random ones I found because I'd lost the originals. Same deal. You just pull it and it just kind of flops off of there like a dead fish. So that's your cable management. This channel and this just chasm is your channel. If you're really good with like zip ties or cable ties, you can make it work if you've got a power supply and a cable management setup that doesn't have a mess of cables. But if you're running like a push-pull configuration on your cooler or like an AIO and you're trying to run like 4 fans and you've got a graphics card that's got 2 8-pin connectors on it and you've got a CPU that's got an 8x8 connector on it and you've got a modular power supply with 8 cables hooked up to it, 4 hard drives, it's not going to work. So buy a bigger case, buy a modern case. This won't do it. If you want to do a legacy build, this is what I would recommend for this case, to be honest. If you want to do a legacy build on this thing, that's the best thing to do. Do like an AM2, a 775, like a Core 2 quad, or even an AM3 like I did, back when this case was relevant and what it was actually meant for. You could get by, or like even an old i5 or i3 or something. But don't expect to put like an i9 in here or an R5 and get really good cooling, because you're not going to. It's not built for that. It doesn't have the airflow capabilities. It's old, And it's true, and I will attest to this. There are some old cases that with a little bit of modification, sometimes none, you can get really good cooling because they were timeless designs in the cooling aspect of things. But this is not a timeless case in that aspect. It's timeless in its looks, but it's not its design. It's definitely not a well-designed case in any way whatsoever. It honestly feels like it was designed to be something else, and they changed their mind at the last minute. To be quite honest with you. See, the paint's real thick, so you got to kind of push that sucker on there. Because that paint, like I said, that paint is good. None of this is chipped. It's just dirt or like just a smudge or something. None of it is chipped. None of it is broken. It is really good quality paint. There's a little bit of a gap right there at the front. I just noticed that. Maybe if I put the side panel screw on and crank it, it'll push it forward. No, it's just kind of a little gap right there. That's not too bad though. Not for a cheap case that's got 1/2 inch thick paint on it. So to get the front off, you've really got to yank the hell out of it. Like it's... Okay. I do not want to blow something out trying to get this front panel off. It's got like these plastic things you can try and push on, but... Okay, I got the first... Shit. All right. Okay, one thing I'd recommend doing, and I didn't even see this till now, where the front fan mount is, they have this really thick, it's not even mesh, it's just foam. I'd pull that out of there. That's not going to get any air. Maybe that's what was wrong with this. I'm going to leave this off here because I'm going to do some mods on this now. But here's that. So what I'm talking about is, and I'm going to have to take the camera down to show you, is that there are screws for a fan above the other one, and you might be able to get it in there. But you can see there's a screw hole right there above this 120, and right behind these USB ports, More screw holes. And I checked, and it will fit a 120. So interesting. And I think there's a slightly enough room, especially if I modify that 3.5-inch bay, where I could get some more airflow through this thing. So I've already been doing some case modding. Shh, don't tell anyone. I've already been doing some case modding that I'm going to be showing off soon. And maybe I'll add this to the list. So there you go, guys. The Thermaltake Commander MS-1 Snow Edition Legacy ATX case. Also known as White as Hell. So hope you all enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more Airsoft Man 819 content. Remember, I'm not paid by anybody. I'm not bought out by anybody. I have no ads running on my channel. I never will ever again. I'll never be monetized ever again. I'll never be a partner with anybody ever again. I'll never be owned by anybody ever again. So the content's always going to be what I want it to be. And I hope you guys enjoy that about me. So, peace.